dude. Because it's like I think one of the main deciding factors in maybe not a deciding factor, but analyzing the way people live their life is just like I think in this country, in this time in history, we have forgotten the rules of life and the way that life works. Like how many centuries and millennium did we spend at the start of civilization trying to put together some sort of categorization or understanding of how the world works? That's what fucking religion all was. That's what myth and legend is about. That's why the Greek mythologies, those stories that try to explain some of the more truth, some of the more true things in life through those type of lessons. The stories are a way to explain that shit in a way that people retain. But it's interesting, man, because it's just like I feel like in this day and age, we don't even. First of all, we don't even really have the stories. Like what stories do we have? People are for the most part not religious anymore. People don't really follow along with a lot of doctrine from a type of religious environment. It's not an American thing on the public scale. Obviously, there's many communities that do within America, but I'm talking at the culture at large. So America exists as like this. It's interesting in America because the culture is not tied to any individual group of people, because the nation exists as a whole. But it's like the way that it's set up, anyone can do whatever they want within that. There's no restrictions on what you can do. So it's like all these different communities can exist within America, but there's still an American culture. There's still a coherent shared culture that exists inside of Americans. And it is not the religious experience. It's not the religious corpus. It's not the stories that come from that. What it is just an ideology that you will be happy by achieving things and getting things. And that's kind of it. I guess we have stuff like fucking Snow White, like fucking Disney movies and shit. But that was from like the 40s. The Disney movies they're making now. But that's like for kids, anyways. I don't know, man. It seems like we've forgotten that. I mean, that was our way to try to explain how the world works, try to understand how the world works as a group. We got to live in this world together. We got to have a shared understanding of how the world works. I don't think that, in my opinion, I do not think that you necessarily have to have a contrived understanding of the world. I think the world exists independent of you or your friends or anything. Right? I truly think that that the universe works in certain ways that are not dependent on our participation. And there's points in physics that debate that. That is a controversial statement, because there are people that would say that we derive our own truth from the world, and we get to decide our own versions of that. But it's like, dude, I think there's, to an extent, I've discussed this before, but I think to an extent that's true. But to me, truth is something that exists, but we are so imperfect as human beings, as entities, as these physical bodies, these whatever we are, we're so imperfect existing in our three-dimensional realm, our three-dimensional plus conscious realm, that we can't look at truth and see it for what it is exactly. You can't look at it. It's like looking at the sun. Like you can't really look at the sun. You know it's there. You know pretty much what it is. You know it's really bright, but you can't look exactly at it and see like the fucking things on the surface of it. You can't see the detail in it. And that's what I think truth is. It's something that we're so imperfect. Like to see the sun, our eyes are just not the right equipment to do it. And I think the human brain, the human senses, human nervous system is not the right system to truly observe truth. So what we get is a skewed perspective where we see a certain angle of the truth and we end up with the periphery view of it. So we're getting like a cross section of the truth. We're getting these aspects of reality that are informing us enough to exist together and share. So we share these perspectives, the shared perspectives of the truth. And that's why most religions all have, similar tenets that comprise them. They all have the stories in religion and actually myth going back to the beginning of civilization. There's thematic elements that are retained through it all. So it's like this is different cultures, different times through history, different people trying to look at truth to understand it. But everyone has a bit of a different perspective. So everyone gets a bit of a different chunk that they're able to bring out of it. And also you add your own flavor to it. You fill in the gaps between the information that you don't particularly have all there. So it's like we don't get the full story because we aren't able to see it. It does exist though. That's my point. That's my point. The overall point is that just because we can't fully see the truth, just because we can't fully comprehend it, just because we are so imperfect that we are not able to get right there and see it and get up next to it and inspect it perfectly, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's there. We just can't get to all of it. So it's like that's where it's like people are deciding that they want to see a certain portion of the truth and ignore the rest of it. It's like do that at your own fucking peril, man. The point, my overall point is that life works in certain ways. There are certain rules to life. This is what, and that's what the point. That's why I went into that. Is that that's what our species has attempted to correlate and categorize and put it into an understandable sort of meaning by telling these stories. And now our culture doesn't really have that. We don't have a way to understand truth outside of what it is it's the scientific effort. It's the scientific rationalist method, which is great for what it is. But what post-enlightenment science does is it's just another way to try to get to that truth, man. Where everything, religion, any sort of conceptualization of reality is a way to try to chip away at the truth to try to get closer to the center of it. Religion just takes a bunch of sees some of it and then goes, we're going to throw a bunch of guesses into it and try to make it work, and try to fill in the gaps here. And they're trying to get big picture. They get big picture. Major religions want to get the big picture and then move down to the deep. They fill in the details as they get closer towards the center, towards the more granular elements. But they put together an overlying schematic that gives you this world to live in, that gives you an understanding of the truth that we are not able to fully comprehend, right? Because we're imperfect as humans. But then what religion does is it in that morass of truths, and maybe there's some lies in there. There's some half truths. There are some themes, and there are things weaving in there that are true, that are inherently true, because it was just one of the slices of looking at the truth and trying to understand it. So that's not to say religion is necessarily made up, but there are of course there are aspects of truth in it, because it's derived out of an effort to understand the truth. So they got some of it, but they not, obviously you can't get all of it, so they had to fill in some of the shit with whatever, depending on the religion. Who cares? Who gives a fuck? That's not the world we live in. The world we live in is the post-enlightenment rational, is a post-enlightenment rational, materialist capitalist world. So what science does, post-enlightenment science looks at the truth. So it's the same effort as religion, but it's a different approach. Instead of saying we understand the full picture, we're going to fill in all the gaps and give you the whole story packaged like this. What science does is it's like going into a dark room, closing your eyes and just feeling out. And whatever you touch, you're going to start to get an understanding of it. So it's like you have this big, vast darkness. And then you have this little candle that's held up, and you're seeing a little bit more of the space of reality as you move. Now, what science doesn't do, it doesn't pretend to understand what's outside of what's known. So this is the difference between science and religion, is that science doesn't make an attempt to explain away the things that are not fully clear. Now, here's the problem with that. I don't think humans can live in a world where we don't have a full picture of what reality is. We need to have an explanation of the truth because we aren't able to comprehend it. So we have to have things that come in and fill that space. There's a need to have an understanding. We have to have a world, especially in societies and cultures. We have to have a shared worldview which we operate in. Otherwise, we're going to break down because everybody's going to have their own understanding of what the truth is, because everyone's going to have their own individual perspective of looking at the truth. And some people aren't even going to try. Some people are going to spend their whole life trying to figure it out. So it's just going to be everywhere. That's kind of what we have now. But it's like with religion, everyone is in the same perspective and looking at the same thing. They got the same understanding. They're working together, even if some of the shit in there isn't true. Now, again, this is all looking at something that does exist. This one of the main tenets of this point is that this is all looking at something that legitimately does exist in the real world. Maybe not in the three-dimensional space-time that we exist in, but it does exist. This is what bothers me about people who say truth is in the eye of the beholder, or truth is subjective. I disagree with that because our interpretation of the truth is such, but truth itself exists outside of our interpretation of it. So that's where I think that's important, because you got to understand the flaw isn't in the way that the world is set up. The flaw is in us. We are the ones that are unable to comprehend fully what the world is comprised of. It's not the world. The world isn't messed up to the point where things aren't true. Fuck that. It is. There's real shit that actually exists. We all know it. See, there's pieces of the truth that we know for sure. You do something bad, you get punished. You work hard, you earn money. You know? Whatever. You could go on and on with agreed on aspects of the truth in the world. But then it's like there are certain places where we just don't, the perspectives that we take in this day and age, we're not able to agree on it. And this is going back. So the religious efforts were able to give, this is what they were able to do. And this is why those societies were able to flourish so fucking amazingly, or not, because, you know, the dark ages in the middle and were a very oppressive, dark time. So maybe religion, I don't know. It does get a society to move together in one direction, which does have benefits. Obviously, a lot of drawbacks, but being able to have a shared understanding of the world is very beneficial to a society, especially a culture, a coherent, cohesive culture. Now, America is an anomaly. And there's nowhere like it. Maybe Canada is kind of similar. I don't know. Maybe my perspective is a little bit off on it. I don't know. But what I do know is that in America, we do not have a shared vision of the truth. And it's because what we are looking through the lens of post-enlightenment rationalism, the scientific method, which does not even attempt to fully construe the grand truth that exists in the universe. So we're not even trying. So there's this small amount of shit that we know to be true, whether through the social sciences, proven through physics, through other branches of academia, or, life, shared experiences that we've come through history to understand these things are true, borrowed aspects of other cultures that we know to be true. The moralities that we hold in America are tenets of Christianity or the Abrahamic faiths, whatever, man. We've taken that shit with I think some of the best parts of all of that has come with. So it's not like science is sitting alone fighting the fight by itself, but it's like we don't attempt to make an explanation. And this is where people are left. Again, people are imperfect, and some people are more imperfect than others. You put people in that situation, and oftentimes they will despair. when people aren't able to have a full understanding of the world, they're not comfortable with it. They don't like it. It's not a position people want to be in. And this is where we've left people here. And we just kind of we left them drowning a little bit. I don't think it was intentional. I think that it's a necessary adjustment to make. It's got us a long way. Look at the way the world has changed in the last 300 years. Drastic, amazing changes. 300 years ago was 1724. That's unbelievable. The difference. 1724, there wasn't an American city west of South Carolina. That's amazing. But now, it's like, what are we now? And where do we go from here? Because I think looking at the way that America turned out over the last century especially, it's just, I don't think it's working out on a societal level to not have a coherent and shared understanding of the truth. And I think that we've seen religion really fall away in the last 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. So that which was binding us together, yes, America was a bit of a disparate culture. We always had a separation of church and state. However, the populace was more centered. The communities were more centered in religious endeavors. People went to church. People were engaged in those communities on a regular basis. People were able to get those parts of social life. Although, the shared American culture, which exists outside of those religions, probably started to really rear its head. I don't know, man. World War I, World War II, those type of time frames. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about like 100 to 70 years of change. And the situation we find ourselves in now is godless, and it is directionless, and it is full of confusion. And this is it is almost biblical, right? That sounds biblical in some sense. Because what it is it's a repetition. It's like don't think that something like this hasn't ever happened in history. History tends to have rhymes. History tends to have moments that come and go, the ebbs and flows, have harmony. And so it's like we have this massive multicultural state with no true shared value system. Here's the thing that I wish I was enough for America. I wish that the pursuit of freedom, liberty, and justice was enough to hold us together. I wish that was it. Because that's what I believe America is. It's an idea that a man can live a life without someone coming in and saying and telling him what to do, right? Without someone coming in and oppressing him. And obviously, America's never been perfect at that, ever. Nothing will ever be perfect at that. but it's the ideal. It's the idea. It's holding up that idea that a man can be free and live his own life, and justice will be served by the state. Well, it corrupted. It failed us. But that idea doesn't go. Right? But I think that proves that it's not enough. And obviously nothing's ever enough. Everything comes and goes. Everything is born and dies. The rise and the fall of the tides on the planet and everything. I understand that. But it's like things went so wrong here. Things went so wrong. They went so badly. And it's like, what? And what I don't like is that I know the truth is sitting right there. You know, the truth is sitting right at the edges of what we can see. And it's like, it's not nothing, man. Like, you guys are arguing just because you're taking different perspectives on it. I don't know how to fix that. It's like, do you just get an understanding of what truth is, the actual? Would that be enough to explain to someone this? Probably not. People don't want to hear this shit. The average person isn't going to sit and listen to that. They don't care. People just have their own beliefs, or lack thereof. A lack of belief is a belief. But I think that we're so in the dark. We've left, the culture and the society has left the people with such gaps in the needs of humans. Our needs aren't met as a society in this culture. And I think it's a shame, because I don't think it's right. I don't think it has to be like that. I think we had religion. It had its flaws. Now we have science. It has its flaws, but there's got to be something that's, why aren't we blending things together? Why isn't there a combination of such that allows us to have a shared perspective on the truth, but at the same time, as it becomes more clear, and integrate it? That's what I don't like, is that people are unable. A periphery, nebulous viewpoint on the truth is inevitably going to change. So this is why you can't ever have rigid beliefs, because it's like things seem to be in flux, inevitably and endlessly in flux, and they're never going to stay the same. So any rigidity is just a fool's errand, man. You can't be rigid. It's not like that. Things aren't like that. And there is no real national identity in America. That's the thing. Like, we aren't a country built on an ethnic background. We aren't the fucking French. We aren't the Vietnamese. Like, we're Americans. Everyone here is from some random fucking place. So the nationalism doesn't do much here at all. You know, America lives behind an idea. It exists in an idea. It does not exist in a people. It does not exist in a state. It does not exist in a race or a creed or a religion. It just exists in an idea. That's it. So